This one. Ah. Occupying the whole range. All right, let's get to it. Hey, it's Janek Gwizdala. It's the Janek Gwizdala podcast. A lot to talk to you about, a lot of things to show you, and right up front, some things to get your feedback on. Really important. So let's do housekeeping, because I have the browser tab open. Tour dates coming up. They are fast approaching. If you're in Los Angeles, what are we today? November 10th, 11th, something like that this is going out. If you're in Los Angeles in about 10 days from now, kind of a special, rare and one-off performance with Bob Reynolds as a trio with Clarence Penn on drums. One of my favorite things to play kind of cordless, even though I will be providing a vast amount of the chordal support and harmonic background, with taking things in a little bit of a different direction and playing trio, obviously with two people who are immensely capable of it. But that's kind of a unique one. We don't ever, in fact, I don't think we've ever done that with Bob for a full gig, even though we have played trio a little bit as kind of a feature in the middle of the set. Anyway, November 20th, Baked Potato, day after my birthday, here in LA, 2 sets. Then we're into December with Mike Stern, Seattle, Demetrios Jazz Alley, December 9th and 10th. Kumwa, Santa Cruz, December 11th. We're at Catalina's Jazz Club in LA for 2 nights, December 12th and 13th. We have a much needed night off before we go to Oakland, California to play Yoshi's for 2 nights, December 15th and 16th. And we wrap up that little tour here on the West Coast in Phoenix, Arizona at the Musical Instrument Museum, somewhere I've played a bunch before with Vital Information. Love that place. On December 17th, you have been warned. Don't get in the comments in January saying, oh man, I had no idea you were coming to Phoenix, Santa Cruz, Seattle, any of the places. I haven't played in Seattle in a long time. So come on out. All right, that's it for housekeeping. Now let's get to the notes, because I really want your feedback on this. It's something that's a really important part of my life that is always sort of percolating here in the background, sometimes more successfully than others. And I've started to have a few more messages and comments on the channel asking questions about it. And I want to get your feedback as to whether that's something you want to hear about in the podcast, maybe in a separate podcast channel. I don't know. I don't think I'll start a whole channel for this, but if you want to hear something more in depth about this, and that is, simply put, sort of health and well-being specifically for musicians, being that here I am about to turn, I've got to do the maths. It's I'm about to turn 47 in next week, and never has it been more important in my life at this age, plus being a dad to a 4-year-old and all those other things that make up my life. It's never been more important, and definitely not consciously more important. Even when I was competing as an athlete in my youth, it's never been more important to be aware of that side of my life. And I'm sure there is such a mix of people out there, from in terms of age, in terms of where you're at with your health journey, your fitness, your mental well-being, all that kind of stuff. If you want to hear more about it, get in the comments below this episode. Let me know yes or no, and what specifically. Now, obviously, I am not qualified to give you any sort of specific medical advice. I can only talk anecdotally about what my experiences have been. I can talk about having been an athlete before, the sorts of training, the type of training I did when I was a kid, and the type of payoff that had. Actually, I think it probably got me through my 20s as a musician, putting in all that work very early and being in a really supreme physical condition. Not that I was really aware of that at the time, but come early 30s, it was definitely beginning to wear off, or had fully worn off, and I had to take a slightly different path. Some of you will know from the daily vlog back in the day that path was tennis, and I ended up working with the Bryan brothers on the men's professional tennis tour for an entire season, a whole year, traveling with them as sort of a fitness coach, hitting partner, that kind of thing. So I have some some experience both as a young athlete and then as a member of a team of high-level professional athletes. And then I have, of course, the most important thing is my experience now, because that's what matters, what I'm doing now. A lot of those things in the past have informed my level of capacity, of skill sets. They've improved my skill sets. Right now, I don't feel like I'm by any means starting from scratch. I feel like I have a great handle on a lot of aspects of what it takes to be in good condition these days, and what it takes to sort of maintain and prolong your life and kind of have a happy end of your. I don't want to be all morbid and everything, but that thing of having a happy, fun, and mobile end of your life. And I'm definitely thinking about that a lot, and have been for a while. This isn't anything new. It's just something I've started to get more questions about on the channel. And I figured, okay, I can open up, and I'm very happy to talk about it. Again, must preface it all with it not being any sort of specific medical advice to people. But if you find yourself in similar arenas, similar situations, which if you are a musician and or a bass player listening to this, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you've played gigs. I'm sure you've had crappy food late at night. I'm sure you've suffered from a lack of sleep, whether that be through a baby screaming if you're a parent, or if that's being on the road and the schedule just being incredibly intense and it not being possible. There are all of those things that I can speak to, how I deal with them, who I have looked to seek information from, whether that be the current gamut, and the well is deep, and I think it takes a lot of listening and a lot of understanding and perhaps a lot of experimentation to figure out who it is you trust. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts? Over the years, I've listened to many, many, many podcasts and podcasters who have gone in different directions. And are you a Huberman guy? You're a Peter Attia guy? Do you listen to Rogan? Do you listen to Diary of a CEO, Alex Holmes? I mean, there are so many of these gurus out there, some of them far more credentialed and legitimate than others. And I totally understand that it's it's a big task, a big mountain to climb, just to sort of cut away the bullshit and find out who has the best information to offer. And I've been doing that a lot. I've obviously listening to a lot of people, heading to the internet for information and trying to amalgamate that data and that information and see what lines up, what doesn't, what works for me and what doesn't. But at the same time, I've had a significant amount of professional guidance and coaching and training and all the rest of it along the way. So I've actually experienced it from the perspective of highly qualified sports nutritionists, sports scientists, athletic trainers, fitness coaches, physios, from that side of things. So I'm incredibly fortunate. Maybe this is why I want to talk about it so much, potentially, and I've thought about it for a while, oh man, this would be really good information to share, because I know not everyone has that thing. Not everyone's the psycho like me, who just took a hard left turn and went off and stopped playing bass for a year and went and did that sort of semi-professionally. Or maybe you didn't have an athletic youth or any of that stuff. So if any of that information I have is of value to you and you think that might be something worth tuning into, let me know. Get in the comments below. It's always interesting to hear what other people struggle with, and I'm sure there are, like I said, many similarities that we have, and probably many similar goals as well. So it'd be a nice conversation to have. I also want to start interviewing people specifically for you. I would love to have, people like Peter Attia, who is one of the people I sort of greatly admire and seems to be one of the most legitimate people out there talking about this kind of stuff, and is consistent and qualified and sort of sticks to a pretty focused method, mission statement kind of thing. And of course, is wildly successful doing it, makes a lot of money and all that stuff, and it's hard to scrub away the success and that from the information. But that's somebody whose book I've read and who I pay attention to. Again, like I said, I'm very fortunate to have also come at it from the standpoint of that's not the first person I'm hearing talk about that stuff, and this isn't the first time I'm implementing any of this stuff in my life. So I feel like I have maybe a slightly better chance than most people to understand it, and be like, oh yeah, I have actually done that before, and that makes total sense, and that did actually work. So, and like, again, any of that stuff, I'm going on far too long on this subject. It is something I'm quite passionate about, though. So yeah, get in the comments, let me know about that. Something that's really important to me. I'm quite happy to share it with you, and it's for all levels as well, right? I think everyone, the spectrum of people listening to this podcast will probably run everything from young, complete beginner to far older than me, maybe was always an amateur but is a musician and has a lot of the traits and does gigs and is in that sort of sedentary, this seated position so often to spend time with the instrument or at the computer. And maybe there are parallels, even if you're not a musician, there are parallels between what we do as musicians and your full-time job, such as just sitting and being sedentary for so long, that we could talk about ways to get out of and good habits to get into. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to start making a daily vlog about it, but it'd be cool if you have questions to talk about it and see where people are at. Always pretty fascinating to have a conversation like that. On this channel, on the YouTube channel, I started YouTube memberships. I'd seen it pop up. I've seen videos, people talking about it, and you can do this, and it's a way for the fans to connect more, and this and that and the other. And it seemed like it was sort of emojis and badges and this, that, and the other thing. It all kind of felt very social media-y, and it took me back to like Twitch streaming, which is a horrific period of my life. So I've really sort of not paid it much attention until recently, when I was going through a bunch of hard drives. Tons of these. I have dozens and dozens, probably over 100 of these things at this point. And I came across all the videos from Janek's Bass Studio, something that started off as videobaselessons.tv over almost 16 years ago, and what morphed into Janek's Bass Studio, and what ended up closing. Everyone that was a member and had a lifetime subscription, everything, I moved the information to a certain spot, but then it was closed. Those people were grandfathered in, and I gave them access to it all, but then it was sort of closed as a thing. And I have all of these videos. I opened a few up. I was like, maybe I'll edit some clips for YouTube. That could be cool for the channel. And I was like, actually, some of these courses are great. I've realized I spent the time, I factioned them they were always kind of 10 or 12 week courses. It's like, this goes at a good pace. It's good information on a given subject. Maybe that's what YouTube memberships should be about. It's easy for me to upload that stuff that already exists. And if you are already a YouTube user, perhaps it is something that appeals to you because you are on the platform already. It's not like signing up for another thing like I was using Thinkific. I was using a bunch of those sort of course sales platforms. They were always kind of a pain in the ass. So I was like, okay, let me start throwing some courses up there, open up the membership side of things, and see how it goes. So this is just to let you know that is happening. Somewhere in my channel you can find memberships. There are 3 different levels. There is sort of the basic fan level. There's a next level where I'm doing sort of member only videos, member only shorts, because there's so much stuff that I record in portrait mode with the phone when I'm practicing, because I want to listen back to it. Something that's really, really important to me, because I want to listen back to it and I want to look at my technique. But there's actually there almost always ends up being something useful in there that I always think, I should make a video on that. But time is what it is. Time is limited, and I figured if I start uploading those as shorts for members only, that's something you can work through at your own pace. And they're smaller. They're 1 minute. Well, I guess maybe you can have a short that's 3 minutes long. Anyway, they're that style of video where you can take a short chunk, small chunk of information and go work on it. So members only, shorts and videos on the middle tier. And then I think I called it the apprentice. There was like the fan, the super fan, and the apprentice. Those are the 3 tiers. And then on the apprentice, that's where you get access to all of the stuff on the other levels, plus all of the Janek's Bass Studio courses. I think there are 2 12-week courses up there right now, and basically I have dozens of those courses. So basically I'm trying to set aside the time to add a new course every week. I'm doing 1 a week right now. So within a few months, it will have literally hundreds, maybe 400 or 500 videos up there that are all set into courses to learn more about music, learn more about the bass. Okay, that's all the housekeeping. what's happening this week and why I have my bass on. I don't know why I had the bass on for all of that talking, but the pedalboard, as I've talked about with the Wetterbox, that was the latest thing. If you haven't seen that episode, after this one, go back and check it out. It'll make all of this stuff make more sense. The Wetterbox, it's incredible. It's by the Gig Rig. I've just been raving about it to you guys. There's a little party going on in my head about it here in the studio. And I finally built it into a pedal board, into a platform. And I'm doing something new this week where I'm finally going to take my bass off for a second, where instead of going through the super arduous and it really does take a lot of work to run the second camera and then color everything and then edit it. I've got to basically rewatch the entire podcast and switch from one camera to the other. I'm going to try something using the phone, because this is like a segment that I really want to share with you. I think it's important that you see the visual of this pedal board while we talk about it. And I can just cut that little video in and you get the best of both worlds. You'll get probably more content from me because it takes me less time, and you'll get to see the close-up. So here we are switching to the pedalboard cam. I really didn't factor in the fact that the mic is so bloody far away, but you can see it all right here. Now a few things that are new here. Number one, I'm going with the Caveman Audio BP1 as my preamp right now. You're going to see the color box hiding down there. That's in preparation for another video that's coming next week for JHS. But I want to try the Caveman Audio BP1 on the road for a little while. And it's the first time I'm not putting a preamp on the board itself. I have enough space in the flight case, in the way I travel with this gear, that I can just house this separately, maybe in the mono tick bag with a few utility things. So this, and in fact, the volume pedal, which you see here, those two things are going to be off the side of the board. Out of the board, then, I have this 1/4 inch, which gets me into that sort of peripheral side of things. Of course, it won't be precariously balanced like it is up here on the desk. Now, something else I'm doing, I've got the Canvas Stereo DI over here, and that's quite exposed. I just wanted to start making things so much easier than they have been previously. That was previously housed under the riser at an angle just so I could get the two XLRs in. It was never great. So what I've done now is put it on the outside of the board, makes it so much easier to plug in and go to the house, and then plug in this single 1/4 inch, which is summed stereo to mono, to go to the amp to monitor on stage. Another thing which you may notice if you've seen any of my boards before is that normally it's all set up visually as though everything were in series from right to left. That's generally how series goes, right? Right inputs on the right, outputs on the left. And I would just run the top level right to left, and then the bottom level right to left. The very last thing would be the looper at the end over here in the left-hand corner. And then the DI would be tucked up under the riser. What I've done now is just made the layout more musical and user-friendly. So as you look at it, they are the pedals for the most part are not in the order in which you see them. The looper is in the center, for instance, just to make it a little bit easier for my right foot to get over. With routing, it didn't make sense to put it all the way over on the right, although ergonomically and the fact that I use it with my right foot, it would. But this is so far my first sort of compromise experiment with that. So looper in the middle, although it is the last thing in the chain before we go to the DI. I have the Wetterbox, which is, I have to get away from the mic for a second, but I'll show you under the hood. Now, bear in mind, nothing has been tied down in terms of the cabling. I've only just got it to be cabled and be powered, so it looks like an absolute rat's nest under here, although it is all fired up and it is all working. The Wetterbox is back there in the corner, and I've got the side facing the front of the pedal board to expose the expression pedal socket and the foot switch socket. Now, I've got this red remote from JHS, which is going to be mounted with this door lock, as you can see here, with this door lock to the top of the DI right there. I'm just waiting on a cable, on a new TRS cable. So once I get that, that'll go in here. That'll sit up next to the riser, and then the red remote will sit up there, and I'll be able to switch the Wetterbox on and off really exposed and not in any no hazard of hitting any other pedals there. So I love that. That's mounted and exposed. And then the expression pedal for that will sit off to the side with the volume pedal and the preamp. And that allowed me to either blend or mix. Probably going to go with blend, because in channel A, I have the Mood Mark II, and in channel B, I have the Autobit Junior that doesn't have a blend knob. So I'm going to have the Mood and be able to blend the Autobit with it rather than mix from the Mood full wet to the Autobit full wet. So those are over to the left, and those are closer as the crow flies to the wetter box. That made patching, cabling so much easier. Then I have something I need to make a full video on, because the Generation Loss Mark II is back, but I can't get into that right now. I'm going to feel like an idiot if I start talking about why it's back and how I screwed up. So look for the next episode to be all about the Generation Loss. And those are kind of my time-based effects. I have the Cornerstone Nucleo going into the Generation Loss, which is then going into the looper. So that's, despite being on the top right-hand side of the board, those are my last two pedals before the looper in the chain. And then the stomp, which is way before all of that, is all the way down to the bottom left. So ergonomically speaking, it does make a little more sense. The pedals that I need to get to twist knobs and to do some sound design on the fly and improvise with are higher up on the riser. The utility stuff is hidden in the back. And then the mono stuff is over here, the Mantic, Hulk. And again, this is not the signal chain here. It actually goes to the octave pedal first, to the bass octave deluxe, then it goes to the Mantic Hulk, then it goes to the Frantabit, and then the Frantabit goes out to all the way over there to the HX Stomp. So that's boom, boom, boom. That's the pedal board. Let's get back up to this cam. And boy, I mean, I'm loving it. I can't wait. I really can't wait to get to some gigs and fully road test it, because even though I think this is the best idea I've had so far in terms of a build, you never quite know until you really get there, and you have to use it. And this gig with Bob Reynolds, this trio gig, will be a test of that, because there's going to be some heavy lifting for me in terms of the pedals. It's also quite often amazing to me how much you can do, and how much I do end up doing with just a reverb. Talking with a buddy of mine this morning about those kinds of pedals that is like a one use per gig, or like I really, as I can share with you here, I don't have the FM on the board for the first time in a long time, despite the fact I love the sound of this thing. But something had to give, and unfortunately that was it. With a Mantic subharmonic, the Hulk, and the Vintage Bass Deluxe, there just wasn't really enough space for another octave pedal. And as you can see from the video I just showed you, there's more space between the pedals than there's ever been before. That's something that I've envied on other players' boards when I see them, and I was like, I kept like bashing foot switches on and off by mistake. And it's like, okay, for the heavy use pedals, the ones I'm going to be manipulating the most with tap tempo and that kind of stuff, I'm going to build in some space between them for the first time, and end up having a compromise and get rid of another pedal and use a slightly bigger footprint board. That's not the smallest Vertex board I have, sort of the one in the middle. And that's it. Those are the ideas. Now, what I do also have, what a happy byproduct of having a preamp off to the side, the Caveman Audio BP1, is that it gives me a clean DI. Not that the others haven't. The Colorbox did that as well, of course. But I can give you an example of that right now. And that's just the DI, completely clean. Unfortunately, the DI doesn't have a mute. Well, actually, it absolutely has a mute, but it mutes the entire signal. What I'm trying to say is it doesn't have an on or off, Whereas the color box, I can engage it or disengage it in terms of the EQ and all that kind of stuff. The BP1 Compact doesn't have an on-off switch. So I am not able to A/B it for you. I'm just able to give you an idea of the fact that I have this other signal, this other clean DI before any of the effects in the front of the signal chain. So for recording, that can be kind of useful. And depending on the gig, it could turn the board into two different things. One sort of like space odyssey, ambient looping weirdness thing, but also the option to be straight up the middle and ignore all of that if I want to. And if I want to monitor mono through an amp maybe and stereo to the house, a few different nice routing things without having to get too complicated. And with this, yeah, just with the reverb alone, like I said, there's that voicing. Anyway, sorry, totally get lost. That's how much I like that reverb. I can really get lost with just a simple ballad like that. Should actually confirm that I remember the rest of the changes to the bridge. Yeah. I was working on some dominant voicings. I just don't have enough fingers on the fretting hand to get those ones. Maybe that's a nice one. That flat 9 voicing. Yeah, why not? Flat 9 natural 13. So yeah. Now, I don't think we're playing Body and Soul with Bob Reynolds, but it's nice to get loose and to be flexible and to work on things that really help give you the confidence, I guess is the best word for it. Just to know that no matter what comes up, you have access to those voicings. You know, Body and Soul, bunch of changes. I can't think of too many of Bob's tunes that have as many chord changes. And some of the ones we play all the time, maybe a little more modal, like Hush, for instance, then that does have some. Yeah, that's. And then just like that, actually, just being able to have access to all the voicings and to do all those things that piano players do. Piano players and We do it as bass players as well, but we generally do it maybe with just one note at a time. Piano players anticipate the harmony. They move to the next part of the sound, perhaps slightly before it gets there, to anticipate it and being able to move with the soloist or with the vocalist. So all of those little things. And having obviously more than one voicing for each melody note within the key. It's great. B flat on a C minor 7 chord. That's a pretty one. But what about the 9 and the 11 or the 5? It's good to be able to get to all of those. Obviously something we don't do that often as bass players, but with this, unique situation, you never know what is going to happen. There's another one as well. Being able to change the color of a chord, even though the chord, who says it has to be E flat minor 7 with the flat 7 as the first chord of body and soul, right? And who says that A flat, that dominant chord, or who says what the tensions actually have to be on that? No one. I'm getting into using a major 7 on a dominant chord a lot, for instance. So that sound of 5 going to 1. There's that 1 but they all have an A flat, a flat 7 in a dominant chord. The genes, the makeup of a dominant chord is a root, a flat 7, and a major 3rd. And I'm kind of finding ways to throw that out of the window by playing more, where's got the little tail of the reverb with that B flat. I could probably make that a bit louder. Hang on a second. Yeah, slightly, but rather than instead of playing kind of altered language, I'm actually playing more I mean, that's a line from Brad Mehldau that I stole, but it really leans on that. Really leans on that A natural on a B flat 7 chord. And shapes I've been working on, so 4th minor 3rd, minor 3rd, 4th minor 3rd. So we've got a B flat dominant chord, but I'm actually using an E flat minor triad and a D minor triad. Kind of D minor 6 sound over B flat 7, but it's got that A natural in it. Anyway, I'm getting super harmony nerd here. And that all came from just listening to the reverb and being like, oh, that's pretty. And then, oh yeah, I've got to work on these tunes, get into this chordal playing. Even if I play like maybe 3 chords the entire night, it's always nice to have that confidence, to know that it's there, and to be like, yeah, I've totally got this. Wherever I want to go, I can go there. And that's how I think that harkens back a little bit to what I was talking about, the health thing and the sort of mental state of what we do. And obviously that takes on many different forms, like, the depression and anxiety and all of those things, which are very real, that creep into our lives, mine included, because of, or not even because of music, for many, many different reasons. And the more I've worked on, going into sort of intense periods of therapy and really talking about that stuff and working on coping mechanisms and ways to get out of ruts and to create, almost reprogram the brain and create better, newer and better habits on a daily basis. The more I've been able to do that, the more it has affected my music positively. And the more freedom I have, the more control I appear to have, and the less anxiety about note selection or knowing tunes or remembering tunes or learning music or whatever it might be. I have far less anxiety about that these days than I ever have before. So that all kind of comes full circle to the health thing. I think every element of the health thing, it's all been net positive, And I will say as well, like, I'm a bit of a psycho. So when I get into, I hope in a good way. So when I get into something, like, I really get into it. And there's very little, unless the information changes so much that it changes to the point where I'm like, oh, this isn't for me. Like, this is just not something I like, something, well, it's twofold, right? It's maybe there's something that I very much need, but I don't like it. So I find a way to compromise my likes and dislikes in order to benefit from the activity. But if the information changes so much that I'm like, oh, I'm just not into this and I don't need it, that's the only time I really sort of admit defeat or move on. And it's important to have that as well. It's something I didn't have for the longest time. Being able to change your mind when the information around you changes. That's really, really important. And yeah, that's something I'm kind of crazy like that. Now I realize there are a lot of people out there who are like, where do I start? What would I possibly do? Oh, I don't really like this, don't really like that. And they've heard all those things about, you must do this, you must lift weights, and you must take these supplements, and you must eat this way, and you can't have alcohol. All these things I'm sure you've heard that are detrimental to your health. And if you only stop these things, then you will live 70,000 years longer than and if you keep doing these things, you're going to die next week. Like all those like clickbait, extreme internet, social media bullshit things that you see out there. I've finally realized that it's like, I'd much rather, instead of do it, even me, like this is, in spite of what I've just told you about how I am laser focused and generally follow through on everything I'm trying to do, even at that level of being a psycho about it, I realized that it was better to find the thing that I'm actually going to do, rather than beat myself up about not doing the thing I think I should be doing because somebody else said so. So I walk a few times a day as part of my thing, just to get out of my house. So I'm not sitting here in the studio. I have a schedule, a little 1 mile loop in my neighborhood, and I do it 2-3 times a day if I can, with a weighted vest. It gives me a little more of a workout. That's in addition to the other workout stuff, which again we can talk about. And I like to do at least one of them with no phone, no nothing. I have the Apple Watch on because I want to track all my fitness stuff, but I try to do one of them like totally uninterrupted. And then one of them will be, listen to a podcast, listen to an interview, maybe music or something. And today I was listening to Peter Attia on the High Performance podcast, 2 English guys. who have a lot of high performance athletes on there talking about what is high performance. It's pretty fascinating. And Peter doing his spiel and, talking about his thing, which is very much out there and on record. And it was crazy, the sort of stats. And it's, I've listened to hours and hours and hours of him, and each time a new interview comes out, I'm like, I've probably heard most of it. But there's always something that is new, regardless of whether he's talking about the same thing. I find this with a lot of like fascinating people like that. It doesn't matter, Brian Cox or Neil deGrasse Tyson, whoever it is, they have their sort of main foundation, but then there are always the little nuggets of information that you go, oh, damn, I hadn't heard that before. Or maybe I hadn't thought about it in that way before. And if it's a good interviewer, they drag the information out of them in a slightly different way and hopefully frame it for their audience a little better. That's what I'd love to do with someone like Peter Attia and a few other people in the space for you guys, because I think that's important to, like, it's all very well hearing it from me, but then to hear it from someone who's like a trained medical professional with far superior knowledge of it in the field would be great. And today's thing was something along the lines of, they were asking them like that classic interview question, like, what are the three things, or what's the one thing? But always like trying to boil it down to one secret source or one bit of inspiration that might help people. And Peter was like, well, try and get a win. I'm paraphrasing, but it was along those lines of like, these are the pillars of health that I try and live by. And this is the standard to which I hold myself, which is kind of what I'm saying to you right now. I identify a lot with him. I think we have some similar views in that sense. We're always like overachiever, kind of that. We're that annoying person, I would imagine. I don't want to speak for him, but I can speak for myself. I am that annoying person. But it was like, totally understand. And he was saying like his patients, he tried to get them to do all the things at the same time initially. Like, you need to do all of these things. Let's get on a program. Let's do them all. And then realize that actually you need to experience a win. It's just like music in a lot of ways. You need to experience getting out on stage and having the feeling of being in that flow state and of a performance going well and of you connecting with the musicians around you and with the audience, and also being present or not, being out in space and it all still working. But you need to get those wins under your belt to give you more confidence to grow and to obviously maintain the discipline and the willpower to want to continue to do the work and get better. So whenever I talk to anyone, I don't offer unsolicited advice ever, but if somebody asks me something specific about that stuff, whether it's music or fitness or whatever it is, that's always actually the thing I say is like, well, let's find something that you can get a win at, like almost right away, like give you the feeling of, oh, I can do that. And this is unequivocal. This is like, there's no question that this is better for me. The data is there to back it up. I think his, Attia's example on this podcast I listened to, and it's from like 2 years ago. It's not anything that just came out this week. He was saying something like, if you are a completely sedentary person and you don't do any exercise at all, it was something like just going, like walking for 15 minutes a day or something. Could have been 30, could have been 10, I don't know. But it was something very, what you might think of as insignificant, like how the hell will that help me in terms of this big overall, potentially big goal of living longer or being in better shape or whatever. But it was like, oh yeah, you could break a habit of being sedentary. And you could do this thing, which is actually quite simple and doesn't take any equipment or anything. You just have to leave the house and put one foot in front of the other. And you will feel better after a couple of months of like noticeably better. And then there's all those other things that are connected with it. I'm sure I'm telling you things you already are well aware of, but like mood and just your overall mental state and how you talk to other people. Like I notice that about myself. If I'm inside, I'm working, I'm at the computer, I'm mixing, I'm editing, I'm practicing, I'm making the podcast, I'm making videos, and I get detached from the outside world for too long, that does not do anything positive for my mood at all. And it is essentially at the end of the day overworking for all the wrong reasons. If it's not in balance. And it's always great to better, for me anyway, I always find it's great to better understand those things, especially coming from the source of someone like a medical professional like that, with great data, great research, great experience, and then being able to apply them in small amounts to my own life And, you know, if we do get into discussing this on the channel, you will see the workload I give myself physically through the week to try and maintain whatever my approximation of a healthy lifestyle is. And if I'm really honest, maybe I'll if we do it, maybe I can share my Apple Watch data or whatever it is, my tracking data, just to show you, like, yes, sometimes it doesn't happen. Life just gets in the way and it doesn't happen. And I used to feel really bummed out about that, and feeling bummed out about getting off the program or off track had such a negative impact. It's with practice. The reason I'm going on about this a bit right now is because it is totally linked to music as well, because I find the same thing happening in my playing world, in my music world. If something isn't going right and I get bummed out about the fact that it isn't going right, rather than letting it go and just picking it up again when I can, that has a really negative effect on how inspired I am or how motivated I am to even like walk into this room and pick up the instrument and work on something. So it's taken me a long time to find that balance of picking something that is realistic. That doesn't mean not having huge goals, because trust me, like, I have massive goals. Like I will have 3 albums come out this year in 2025 alone, which is if you've ever recorded music or written music or released music, you know what that is like. And if you haven't, you'll have to trust me on that. It's a shitload of work, and it involves a lot of people, and it involves money and a lot of time and sacrifice and all those things. But I've found the balance to where I'm so passionate about it that I have the motivation to do it. And even I'm a little late right now on release number 2, and it's going to be a squeeze to get release number 3 in, I'm still not like, I'm still not being hard on myself to the point where it will prevent me from doing the work. I think that's really important. I know it gets like that for me with fitness and with health, and there's a massive parallel with working on music, with practicing, with doing those things, with being motivated to do what it is I love. And I like work in general, but I've learned that I overwork in certain areas where I shouldn't. And that was another good one. It was the closing quote of the podcast, I think, of the interview. And it was like something about the obituary and the resume. Will my obituary look better or more impressive than my resume? And there's like a massive, I think we're so focused on the resume, even if that's just a metaphor for whatever that's a metaphor for in your life at this time. And whatever the obituary ends up being a metaphor for you, it's I think a lot of us, me included, are focused on the wrong, looking at it down the wrong end of the lens. So that was a great one to hear. I was like, oh, that's so right. And there are only a certain amount of seconds, minutes, hours in the day, and you can't scale time. You can't scale like physical labor, and a lot of this is sort of physical labor at the end of the day. So I'm learning to farm stuff out, do less myself in certain areas where other people can do as good a job, and it is their job and it shouldn't be mine, and I should be able to let go of certain things. So there's so much that goes into it from so many levels, and it can start from taking a simple 1-mile walk around the block, around the neighborhood, once a day, 3 times a week, once a week, if that's where you're at, you need to start. It's been really great for me. I drop my daughter. I'm always home before 9, and at 9 a.m. is my first walk. 12 noon is my second one, and I try and squeeze in a third one before it gets dark. It's getting dark early here now. It's the winter time here in California, but I try and squeeze in a third one in the evening after dinner. That's kind of how I've been doing it. It's had a massive, the only reason I share that with you is because it has had a massive impact. Just that alone, never mind the working out and the fitness and all the other stuff I do around it, just that alone has had a big impact. Being outside at various times of the day, a cooler part of the day in the morning, a hot part of the day in the middle, cooler part of the day in the evening again if I can. Huge impact on my mood, on my presence with my family, and on my ability to manage my time better. All right, that's it. I don't have a big like epiphany of resume obituary thing at the end of my podcast here, but I can leave you with that and implore you to get in the comments and discuss and let me know your thoughts, because that's really important to me, and maybe it's important to you too, and we can make something happen. All right, you guys have spent way too much of your precious time with me hanging out. I appreciate it. See you guys on the next one.